ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Brent Laing. And for the kind folks at home who may not be familiar with your amazing innovation, perhaps you have a sample there you can hold up, or
Yeah, it is. I mean, Joe said don't bring any PowerPoint, but Joe also knows me. He knows I can't
yeah, you can't
communicate without at
resist.
least a slide or two.
Yeah.
If you release it to me,
Yep, it's released.
let's just see, share screen.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, let me see. I'll keep it short, I promise.
Okay.
Just to get an idea of the background maybe would help. Can we all see that?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, basically, urology is active as a digital health platform in the field of urology care. And the reason we began this back in 2015, actually, was the fact that for a large part of the population that suffers from issues of bladder dysfunction or BPH, they have very limited success in management. So we take our 58 million patients, by the time we get back or down to a level of effective therapy, we're down to less than 3% being treated. That was a driving force in this. If you look at BPH, I see that we have all males in the audience. Every one of you will have some involvement with this at some point in your life. You got 24 million BPH patients. And of that group, you're going to
remind some folks what BPH stands for.
Sorry, just benign prostatic hypertrophy. Your prostate grows as you get older, and you begin to suffer problems with obstruction and urine flow. And if we look at those 24 million patients, about 2% of them will get to a point of effective management. We throw medications at them that may help their symptoms. It does nothing to stop the progression of this disease. So you're looking at 2 out of 100 patients who suffer from symptomatic BPH ever getting resolved. So we created technology to allow us to gather voiding data at home. And that's basically the heart and core of CarePath. We have a device that's handheld, it's automatic, it communicates by cellular technology, and it gathers all of the voiding data in the patient's home. It has extreme accuracy, it's completely automatic, and it's a 6-year involvement. We've invested $15 million in the R&D effort. We've got 45,000 engineering hours behind it. We've gathered 77 worldwide patents. So it's been a long, long journey in this. It has a complete patient management system. We pick up the patient before the doctor sees the patient now. We determine who should get CarePath. We assign CarePath. We fulfill it. We provide it. We organize the information from it. We provide it to the provider. And then we follow that patient all the way from first visit to final visit. And we've taken the process of that care journey down from 2 to 3 years down to 2 to 3 months. Patient compliance has gone from somewhere around 10% up to 96%. And we're seeing that conversion from initial visit to effective management go from 4.7% up to about 48%. So it's been fairly effective. We've garnered a number of awards over the years. These are the most recent ones. In 2023, at the annual meeting at AUA, which is 6,000 urologists around the country gathering for the meeting, it was featured in the keynote speech as the future of digital care in urology. And just based on word of mouth, based on that particular mention, a few other things that happened at the meeting, we don't have a sales force, but we were able to lock down our first 3-year sales goal by word of mouth alone. So that's essentially CarePath. That's what brings me in the field of digital health. Now, I have to make a confession, because we're here talking about digital health. We had no intention when we started of building a digital health product. I have a history of clinical care as a urologist for 35 years, and during that time, I had a hobby. I would found companies and I would then sell them. And they're all based on build to sell, right? We would build a product, we'd bring it to the point of market introduction, we would do no sales, we would gather the IP, we'd organize that, we would present it to the right strategic, and they would buy it. So in 2014, I sold my last company, Advanced Uro Solutions, to Medtronic. We had planned the same thing here. The problem was we had a partial solution, and this is where digital health comes into play. This is now 2019. We brought it into doctors' offices. They used it. They said, "Gee, Laing, I love this. I want to use it on all my patients." And then about 2 months later, we found out that it was a complete disaster. They had no ability to manage it. They had nobody in the office to take care of it, to assign it, to bring it back in, to clean it, to put it out. So we faced a real crisis at that point. So we had to completely pivot, change our focus on it, and begin to understand the market better. And I'm talking about, I had a team then that had over 100 years in this space. My management team on this, comes from Medtronic, from the biggest companies in the urology space. They understood this market better, I think, than any team on the planet. And we did not understand the chaos that exists behind the front desk of a urology office. So we learned quickly. And from there, we went on to develop a healthcare platform that I've already talked about before, that basically would allow us to identify these patients and manage. We took everything out of the office. I mean, the urologist may never see our product. He may never handle it. He just gets the information that allows him to proceed with management of the patient.
Brent, I have to interrupt. Please
Sure.
indulge me, folks. I've always been so impressed with Dr. Laing. I loved working on your site, on telling your story. I'm fascinated that I'm even curious, like, have you made more money delivering tens of thousands of babies or selling companies?
I think significantly.
Yeah.
I don't need to deliver 10,000 babies. Yeah, significantly, I do better in this arena.
Yeah, this whole doctor thing should be your hobby.
Well, it is. I don't practice anymore. I gave up practice in 2017. I don't do clinical practice anymore. I don't have any time for it. But the intent of all this is not to blow my horn or to congratulate myself at all.
I know. Well, I actually want to ask you because I remember, I was working with you at that stage where you were just getting into urologist's office. That was the goal. And I'm always reminded, it was Gunther who taught me that any medical device that's going to be successful has to be successful financially, clinically, and operationally. And you had clinical up the wazoo, your financials look great. And wow, it was operations that was your stub toe, that nobody knew how to clean the thing, or nobody had the tools or was familiar with that process. It just seemed so intuitive to me at the time. And that was a big stumbling block. And now you've removed it. I'm very interested to hear the next chapter.
It's a huge barrier to advancement. We didn't understand the chaos that exists in these offices. We went to some of the most well-run functional offices in the country in this space. We're in urology, Virginia, huge practice up in Norfolk in Virginia. And they were getting, for instance, 1,000 requests a week for new appointments. And they had openings for 120. So you begin to see the volume requirements on patient care here, and understand that they had no system in the back to even know who these patients were, where they went. They'd come and have a visit and be gone. The average patient never came back for the second visit. So you're ending up with this huge churning of patients through the system. And what we had to do was solve that problem, or our product was going to be unsustainable and have a great finish and a very quick ending. And that's where we got into digital health. And this is now 2019. We have the product out there. We're going back for redesign, trying to figure out what we're going to do next. And all of a sudden, we had a COVID issue. And the pandemic hit. And digital health went from being, the occasional conversation to the absolute forefront of healthcare. And that timing allowed us to pivot and move into digital health. And that's when things changed. We were able to figure out that the doctor doesn't care about your device. He doesn't care about your technology. He doesn't care about all the work that went into it. He does care, do you make my life easier? Today, are you going to help me see more patients and get more patients through to surgery? Because I'm a surgeon. And I don't mind talking to patients, but I don't like it. And that's the basic urologist. So get me into the OR doing surgeries that are good for my reimbursement and also good for patient care. The other aspect that we didn't fully realize, because it was happening in the background around us, was that urology is no longer dictated by urologists. The majority of groups in the country in urology are owned by private equity firms. And so they were concerned not about so much patient care, they would tell you they were, but really it was the bottom line, revenue generation. So they would go in and they would buy these practices, 300-400 urologists, and then be surprised when all of a sudden urologists said, you know what? I'm working for a paycheck now. I'm gonna slow down a bit. And then you got into falling revenue. And these PE firms were desperate to find a way to improve urology efficiency. So we don't, when we go in and we have a group and maybe there's 300 urologists, we basically have very little contact with most of them. What really happens is the PE firm says this is going to improve our numbers and you will do it. It's a whole different sales approach than we were used to before. And they were looking at the bottom numbers of efficiency and saying, how do we move more patients through to surgery? Because we're not making it on the visits, we make it on the procedures. And that was a change that we had not appreciated until we got deeply into it. Another thing was, the reason we took it out of the hands of the doc in terms of when the patient comes in, we decide who gets care path, which I think is unique. Sorry about that. Is the fact that the PE firm said, look, we don't want, and I won't tell you the word they use, we don't want the doctors messing up this process. So you keep them, again, I won't tell you the word they use, out of it. You tell them what they need to do, and we'll make sure they do it. And that was something we had not imagined or realized going through it. So that's kind of where we came about where we are today, is we control the entire process from start to finish. Go ahead.
I removed your slides so that we could see you while you talked. Are the next couple slides about what the new solution is? Because I'm very interested to see that.
The solution I showed you, it was applying the digital health platform to it. It was being able then to manage the patient care outside of the practice. So we remove all of that burden from their staff. They don't have people to take care of it. They don't have people to manage it. We do that. So we have call centers. We have people that we do that will answer the patient questions on the way through. We're developing an AI platform that allow us to do that much more efficiently. We provide the devices, we get them back in, we process them, we send them out again, and we provide all that information for the doc. And then we organize our care into set sequences of diagnosis. They get put on medication. We very quickly tell them if it's working or not. And then we will move from that into management. And then we follow them after they've been managed to make sure that it was effective. That's an old slide.
Yeah, I put up our little video. I loved working on this with you, and I thought in 20 seconds it told the story so well. So you're saying that these devices don't go into the urologist's practice at all, and that you have some kind of processing center where
we have a processing center, a fulfillment center in Knoxville, and we do all of that. So we will contact the patient, determine if they're suitable for care path. We will then send them the equipment that you're seeing here. We will train them on how to use it. We will have a whole education program going through the course of their study, which lasts a month, telling them where they're at, why they're doing what they're doing, the importance of it, and where it leads. I mean, what the next steps will be in their management. Many of them are done by the actual physicians that they're seeing, so they have some contact with them. Most of this work is being done by the APPs, right? It's being done by mid-levels to take that burden off of the urologist. The first time the urologist sees the patient is probably going to be the day of the procedure. And that's what these groups, these PE firms, these management groups want. They want the urologist in doing what they were trained to do, which is surgical procedures, and they want to use mid-levels to organize these and triage these patients through to be efficiently managed by the urologist.
This was a really good day. I really had fun with you.
Yeah, that was a hospital I used to work at. I delivered 10,000 babies in that building. And probably somewhere around 30,000 operative procedures. That is, by the way, just so you're aware, that's the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains. That's East Tennessee there.
You were telling me in this video, in case people aren't reading the captions, how your biggest problem was that compliance was terrible, people didn't return, and that you had dozens of older ladies scribbling in what they thought they drank and when they think they peed and how much they thought they did a week ago Sunday.
To give you a feeling for this, whether it be a female patient with overactive bladder or be a male with BPH and obstruction, we rely on the information about how bad that condition is and how our therapy is impacting it. And if it's like trying to manage blood pressure without a blood pressure reading, or diabetes and never having a blood sugar. We functioned in that world where we made mainly guesses. We'd send them home with the current technology, with a bucket that fit in the commode, and say, you monitor your urine output and how often you go, and you come back and tell me about it. And maybe one patient in 50 ever did that. Same happened with urologists in BPH. They bring them in, they would try and do a uroflow in the office where you void and they measure the flow rates. And you would find out at that point that the majority of them were unusable. It was an artificial environment. Patient was nervous. Patient couldn't do it. They would strain. There wasn't enough urine, and so you began to work on very subjective sort of feedback and information from the patient. This resulted in very inefficient care, and that's why patients coming in. If I had 100 patients coming in the door with a problem involving their bladder, or a male patient with BPH, by the third visit, there's only 10 of them left. You know, they go home on medication, they have problems, it doesn't work. I say come back in 3-6 months, they don't come back. So I end up seeing a lot of the problem is you're seeing these same new patients time and time again and not getting anything effectively done. So you're just sort of churning those visits at the very beginning and not getting to effective therapy. This is where digital health made the difference.
Right.
You can
I remember
organize.
how you said that here you were trying to assess their condition so that you can prescribe effective treatment, and your data was terrible because it was so incomplete, and
It
you know,
was
you're
terrible
basically
or non-existent.
yeah.
You know, let's say you're a man and you come in with terrible.
Let's say I'm a man. Go on.
What's that?
I said, let's say I'm a man. Go on.
And let's just, for the purpose of this talk, say you're a man, Joe.
Okay.
And
For the purpose of this talk only, I'm a man. Please continue.
okay. And then you're coming in and you have significant symptoms. 4 or 5 times a night, you have a weak stream, you're post-void dribbling, all the things that bother men when they hit their 60s and beyond. And most men have these problems. And you come in, you know, and you get on medication, it has side effects, you come back in 3 months, and the doc says, how are you doing? Well, the answer depends how I ask the question, totally. If he thinks I want an answer that's positive, he'll give me a positive answer, basically. I mean, so you know, he doesn't know. He said, well, maybe a little better, maybe I'm not a little better. I can make a decision on that. Do I go to surgery or do I change the medication? We give them data. We can tell them down to the percent how much better that patient is. And that's what they lacked before, is the ability to monitor that progress on therapy. This is not just in urology. This is a number of fields out there in healthcare, but urology is our focus, right? And so they needed that information to say, yeah, this patient's been on a medication, he's not doing better, not seeing improvement in flow rates. We need to change medication or we need to move to definitive therapy. And the patient in that process has been educated as to what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how it impacts their eventual care and what their selection of therapeutic choices will be if they get to the stage of intervention. Before they got a quick prescription, yeah, try this for a while, and they go home and they have no idea what they're doing, why they're doing it, why it's important. And so the patients were just sort of drifting away. I remember a group that in Nashville I had a talk to, and I had dinner with them after, and they did very few surgeries, very few third-line therapies. I'm thinking, why? You're a big group, you're busy, but you're doing very few actual interventions. Why is that? And the answer they gave me was, well, we're too busy seeing new patients. And that summed it all up. They're spending all their time talking to new patients and never getting to a point of actually impacting their outcomes because they weren't coming back and they weren't being followed. So, you know, that's where digital health comes into this.
Carla has a number of salient questions. Carla, you want to come off mute and ask?
Sure. Thank you for the great presentation and impact on patient access, especially as we think of
Try
the
to
rural
keep the number of
population.
slides down. Go ahead, Carol.
And just compliance. Couple questions. Can this be prescribed by the primary care to open up the pathway of referrals? And the second is from a women's pelvic health and, you know, the PT for pelvic floor rehab or therapy. Can this be used also, or has it been used in the physical therapy realm to measure the impact of pelvic floor rehab?
And those are excellent questions. And the answer is yes and yes. The challenge that we have, I mean, there's no question, we've had tremendous interest from pelvic floor specialists in the physiotherapy end of it. We've had a lot of major primary care groups that want to adopt it as well. Our problem, our challenge has been, I don't know if anybody's been out there fundraising the last 8 to 12 months. You know, it has been a nuclear winter for raising capital. So our current production capability is sold out for the next 2 or 3 years just in urology care. And so what we're just finishing now, in fact, we're wrapping up this week, is a Series A fundraising that will give us enough capital to ramp up rapidly our manufacturing capabilities.
How come we're just hearing about this now, and how much can you accept from this crowd?
Well, I think it's closed. We were going
Oh,
for
you
10
bastard.
million
I
for
can't
Series
even
A.
believe it. After all of this, you didn't even give me a chance to invest?
Well, we were going for 10 as a Series A. We've raised 12, and a lot of that's coming in from strategics, from what we call smart money.
I'm smart money.
I know you are, Joe. I know you are. And I know you can write a check for 10 million. I know that too. But the point is, we were seeking, the company or the syndicate that we have together is extremely involved in this space. Very well connected. They've done deals with all these companies that will eventually be our acquisition hopefuls down the road. And so they're very influential for us, or important for us beyond just the capital. The point of it is, Carla, we have a plan that will see us rolled out to primary care probably in 2 years. We will be running very hard on the production line just to satisfy the current sales demand. We have already sold everything we can produce for the next 2 years, and we will probably be 3 years before we can even produce enough handles to hand them off to a primary care. The long-term goal, yes, primary care is going to be essential here. And the reason I say this is because, Carl, one of the biggest problems we face that we've not discussed is we don't have enough providers.
Well, that's what I was thinking. 2 years, right?
The age is 60. So, I mean, these people are retiring. They're done. They're fed up with the healthcare situation. They survived the COVID problem and they're done. So they're retiring. We're not training anywhere near enough. That just doesn't go for urologists, it's nurses and primary care. So we're going to have a catastrophic moment. We're going to have enough providers provide the care. So improving the healthcare efficiencies is going to be critical to that. So, every intent is to bring in those primary care providers to take some of the burden of patient care off of the urologist and the specialist.
If you raise twice as much money, would you be able to build more production?
No, there's certain bottlenecks in the production process. We're looking at expanding that again, adding new lines, and also I think, a Series A. I know you know this, Joe. A Series A is giving up equity for money, right? And you give up more at a Series A than you would.
No, I know.
So we're trying to limit how much a company we have to sell in order to achieve our goals. And our eventual outcome, we believe, is that the two of the investors are major strategics, and they've expressed a very strong interest in acquisition. And so really what we're seeking to do now is we would like to
prove the concept.
Yeah, completely validate the market. We're going to be probably into 20 locations and probably somewhere around 300 or 400 providers, running maybe 5,000 studies a month. At that point, we'll have validated enough that the companies who are investing in us are ready to take us over, and then use your resources to expand into markets like physiotherapy and primary care. But those are very important markets looking down the road.
May I ask
a perfect case in pelvic floor physiotherapy, where you have somebody who's got these issues, but you don't have any way of getting the feedback or the clinical data to say what we're doing is particularly effective or making them better. So I think those are big ones.
The Series A was priced assuming a market cap of?
Well, that's part of the nuclear winter impact, right? You're all aware of when the Silicon Valley Bank went down.
Yeah.
First part of the year. We could have raised our Series A probably in about 6 weeks a year ago. Then nuclear winter happened, and we spent a year arranging the Series A. Now we've turned down some Chinese groups and that we were not suitable for us. But the market, it probably dropped our market valuation by about 50% in the process.
To merely
somewhere around 45. And it's really just the basis of the fact that it's now a buyer's market, right? This is a side event, and it does affect digital health. That's why I bring it up. Is what I'm seeing out there is we're approaching a mass extinction event in startups this year. Especially digital health as well. You're going to see a lot of companies fail over the next 6 months. They run into cash flow runway and they will just fail. We'll be one of the only deals done in our space probably this year. So it's been a very difficult market for capital formation, but you're going to see a lot of people as roadkill this year.
So tell me, the process from a patient standpoint is more or less unchanged versus what I remember from 4 years ago. That is, they make an initial appointment with their urologist or the urogynecologist. They claim that they're having trouble urinating or too frequent or whatever. And then the physician does what exactly? He or she drives.
No, he doesn't do anything initially. He turns them over to us.
Okay, so tell me about that process. So okay. I'm Dr. Laing. I see that Jose Borges cannot.
We have access to their appointment records. We look for new patients suffering from symptomatology that would look to be overactive bladder obstruction secondary to BPH, is not a cancer type diagnosis. And then we contact the patient. We interview the patient.
Hey, this is what I'm not getting. If you're not learning about this patient from a urologist.
Oh no, the urologist practice sends us the patient information.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, it's just a simple step, and we're now in the process of instituting it. and refining it. But the point is, basically, we will know the patient's coming in. They will let us know. They'll have orders that we can contact that patient and see if they're suitable for care path.
Mhm.
The goal of it is to make sure that we're not giving it to people who don't really have a particular benefit from having it. Somebody who's 90 years old and suffers from multiple comorbidities is
Right.
not ever going to be an operative candidate. It's not somebody that's going to be suitable for care path. So we then do a brief interview, introduce the product to them, see if they're suitable. Then we then fulfill it. We send it to them. They use it, and then they arrive at the office with the data in hand. Usually they're going to be seeing the mid-level provider at that point, who then makes a determination on diagnosis.
Okay, a couple things there. One is, so doctor gets in touch with your office, toll-free number, whatever.
Yeah, the practice does.
Okay, and
Doctor doesn't have time.
fine, practice gets in touch with you. What kind of information are you collecting at that point? Everything that the physician has observed, or just?
Physician, in many cases, hasn't seen that patient yet. They're part of the practice, but they haven't seen the patient yet for the initial visit. And we're trying to determine on the phone, we'll contact them and see if they are a suitable candidate for the diagnostic study before they arrive.
I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Is it that the patient calls the practice and says, I'm having trouble?
Okay, I'm a 65-year-old man. I'm calling, and I'm up and down all night. I've been referred by my primary care doctor. He thinks I have BPH
And they
issues.
say, I'm going to have you talk to Brent.
I'm going to have you talk. No, I'm going to have you talk to our urologist. They'll be contacting you to see if we can start the diagnostic process before our first visit to speed up the process.
So the patient doesn't have the first visit at the urologist's office.
In many cases, we're working. This is the model we're working towards. Right now, we tend to have them come in, they get visited, they get to study. What the practices want to do is eliminate that wasted first step, right?
Mhm.
Where you say, I got a bladder problem, let me send you home for testing.
It does
They
sound
come
like
in with the
the
information,
reimbursement
so the
money.
first visit is productive.
Is
And the
it-
first visit.
I understand that you've educated me about how we have far more patients needing urologists than available urologists. People are not getting into the field, they're retiring fewer, etc. Still, isn't it in the urologist's financial best interest to have that 15-minute, oh, I'm sorry, you can't pee, thank you very much, and bill it to insurance for however much?
Not really. He doesn't have the time. So it's a mute point anyway. It's a matter of assessing that patient and determining which ones will benefit from the diagnostic process that CarePath offers, and which ones we need to enroll into a digital program, a digital health program.
So today, what percent of your intake is from patients that have not yet been in person to see their urologist?
Now, it's a small percent. It's probably only about 20%.
Okay.
And we're trying to grow that. That's the process we're doing right now. We brought out a second generation of our platform, and we're working with the practices to try and grow that. This is interest on their part.
Right.
We could see them at the first visit, or we can see them before. What they're seeking to try and do is avoid a wasted visit. Where I get the information and say, okay, let's go do something now.
From a HIPAA standpoint, what platform are you using, and who are you having take those calls? Are they physicians?
No, this is staff at our side of it in our call center, and all they're really determined. They're not there to make diagnosis. They're not there to
There's not a HIPAA
medical care.
implication.
All they're
I'm
doing
telling
is
you about my urinary tract, and that's not a HIPAA
there's being
implication.
trickle residents saying this may be a candidate for CarePath. We contact and say, yeah, they are a candidate for CarePath, and then we assign it. So we can't get involved in the diagnostic process at that point. We don't get involved in the diagnostic process, particularly anywhere through it, because that's not the place for digital health, is it? That has to be done by the physician and the provider. We're just trying to make the process more efficient. Right now, it's probably 20% of what we do. Eventually, it'll probably be closer to 80% of what we do, is get that first visit in there. So when they arrive, the provider has information so he can make a diagnosis. We're just selecting out who would be suitable for CarePath is all we're doing at that.
Before I ask Carla to take herself off mute again, because she had more questions, I have to say, one of the pages that we built that I felt so good about was directly at the advice of our beloved neighbor, Nick Anderson, who said, so often people build these sites and it's the insurance company that's the actual customer. They're the ones paying for the thing. And yet there's no information that the insurance company goes to and sees. Talk to me, not a patient perspective, not a physician perspective, why I should consider reimbursing you. I wonder why you took it off the site.
Our site, that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a very,
It was. And I'm not sure why I can't answer the question very well because I'm not sure why it came off. We don't use our site much.
no,
We
I
don't
know
have,
you don't, but still, it's,
no, we don't for a reason. And just explain the reason. We were going to make that site evolve as our product did. And then we got a situation was we couldn't handle the calls on people interested from not just the US, from Europe, and from Japan. So we just stopped the site and said, look, let's
I
not tell them
get that,
anymore what we're doing.
but the calls that you weren't able to field weren't coming from insurance companies like Aetna and Primera. So those are the people I'm talking about.
Yeah, just explain what we're doing there is we're designing right now a platform, they'll have it out this year, that basically is looking at patient outcomes and patient data and saying, okay, so I think one of the things that we really have to be able to show the payers moving forward, right now they're not looking, but they will begin looking hard at what they're getting for their dollar, right? Is gathering that data, organizing the patient data to show how we are impacting compliance, engagement, outcomes, okay, of the therapies. And that's that we will then be able to present to the payers and say, this is what you're getting for your dollar. I think a lot of digital health right now lacks that key element. I think it's going to be critical moving forward to say, look, yeah, it's great, it's neat, but we're actually impacting patient care. We're improving outcomes, we're improving efficiencies, and we are actually impacting per patient costs in the process.
For those of you considering it, I'll remind you that our next 10X meeting will be in Newport Beach, April 30th, May 1st and 2nd. So Andre, like I said, privately, you and your wife have got to plan your vacation on those days so you can blow it off third time in a row. But Brent has already committed, he'll be there. So if you want to have a chance to talk with him one-on-one,
I'm sorry, I missed your one this year. We had a pollution in the family
Yes,
that
I know.
I couldn't get away from.
Carla, you had more to add.
I'm the
Carla, I'm sorry.
questioner, sorry.
No, that's good.
No, go ahead,
That's what
Carla,
we're
go
looking
ahead.
for.
It's a good
No, it's
question.
exciting because I think that's what my mind was going through. You use the predictive analytics, or AI predictive analytics to scour the data to stratify the patients, for the practices. I think obviously it sounds like the challenge is not demand, it's supply at this point because I can see this blossoming. So my question from the reimbursement pathway, and agree on all the HEOR, because I would imagine a pilot with Aetna or Highmark or one of the smaller ones could be valuable to demonstrate impact. How is the reimbursement? Is it, Jose mentioned the same kind of question I was thinking from IDTF. Is the reimbursement, are you making the money from the reimbursement of a technical component? Or how does it work? Or do you get the global reimbursement? Can you kind of walk through that? And the second part is, how has the reimbursement been with Medicare and private payers when you look at trying to impact the medical policies to ensure coverage?
Take the screen back again and show your slide if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Here's the reimbursement profile right here. These are the 4 codes everybody's familiar with in digital and remote patient monitoring. So we fall under remote patient monitoring. What we do, you have your setup code, you have your supply and equipment code, and then we do the interaction with the patient. That contact with the patient, that following the patient doesn't have to be done by the provider or patient. It can be outsourced. And so we do all of that. Average reimbursement is somewhere around $263. We have a charge for the service of $185, and the rest, the $80 approximately, is what the practice actually receives. It's having done this now through thousands of patients, working with many docs. We thought in the beginning that we present this as a revenue opportunity for the practice, and that would be a big hit. They don't care. $80 here, $100 there is not what they care about. They care about getting these patients efficiently through their practice, correcting bottlenecks. I think we could probably charge them $100 on top of what the reimbursement is and still have a wide open market. So, the real impact on the practice is more on the efficiencies than it is on the reimbursement structure. So yeah, they make some money.
I'm surprised.
What's
Sorry
that?
to interrupt. I'm surprised that they don't care about the money, because if you look at it from I get majority hopefully are focusing on the patient care and treatment, but as we've seen in remote patient monitoring for cardiology, there are many that are impacted also because they're getting squeezed in other ways. So it seems to me a great model where you could extract value in the very service, however they want to do it. If it's a global, or if you keep a technical or maybe follow a similar model like cardiology? I don't know if that would be apply in this.
It's a practice. We provide all the billing documentation. Every second spent on that patient's care is we have a software program that documents what exactly the time spent was, what was done during that time, that we provide to the billing department of the practice. They bill for it. They receive the reimbursement, and we charge them for our services. Very similar to chronic care management in many ways. So that's all handled. What we're finding, let's say you're a practice and you're doing 30 studies a month, just for interest with that doc. That's only $2,400 in revenue that way. But if you're moving 4 times as many patients through to minimally invasive surgery, that's a factor of 10 greater. So, it really, that's what's driving them. That's what drives them, and it drives the PE firms that own the practice. That's where they see that, it increases their revenue, even though they're paying us for a good portion of it. You're driving up the revenue here dramatically for the practice. Dollars in the physician's pocket isn't the same number, but for the PE firm is seeking to increase revenue. That's their business. They buy, they assimilate, and then they grow the revenue with a plan to take them public or sell them off. This is what they want. They want to increase revenue, and their main revenue drivers are going to be procedural, right? Yes, it's also the best therapy for that patient. Early intervention with minimally invasive surgery is the best care of the patient. That's clear by all studies. But it also drives the revenue stream. So that's what's sort of the motivating factor here. In primary care, it's a different game. We may have to re-examine how much they get from their reimbursement stream there. But it's not impacting here. We started off with your belief that the reimbursement would be a big factor here. It's there. It's a minor factor. Does that answer the question?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay.
Luke?
Yeah, I heard you saying that there was interest from Japan and Europe.
Yes.
Do you have any pathway to Europe?
There are. I mean, we've had several groups, some of the leading urologists. I mean, urology is a small club, really, globally. They all go to the same meetings and they all talk about it. And I've had numerous contacts from European urologists saying, when can we get this over here? And we're trying not to develop that interest very much, because the reality is, in this country, our market is about, our core market would be probably 50,000 providers, right? You've got about 10,000 urologists, an equal number of mid-levels that would be using it. You move into gynecology markets, and you've got another, probably 15, 20,000, and you got primary care. Well, 50,000 provider market, we're going to be 4 or 5 years satisfying even a significant, or even a minor portion of that. So, until we get acquired by a much larger firm, that's when you're going to see we expand. It's a global product. All the technology in it is designed on a global basis. So our cellular communication is compatible with any other market. All of the things that we do would need a language change, but no real technology change. So it's designed to go globally. We just won't have the resources to do it probably for another 3 years. But there's no question we're going to do it. And we have people lined up who want us to bring it there, and it's just a matter of we just can't address it.
As you say, it's everybody knows everyone. I'm currently working with a colleague on a urology product, and that's for Laborie. Is that a major name in the field? I don't know.
Laborie is a Canadian company.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I met Laborie Senior first in Canada, where I trained. I trained in Canadian. And they were then acquired, and so they're part of a large organization now. We meet with them probably every 2 weeks to talk about things. So we may be part of. I mean, there's a possibility, of some sort.
I would say it's an excellent addition to their portfolio, and I guess there would be lots of demand here for such a product. So why not?
Laborie just acquired Eurotronic, right? Eurotronic is that makes the catheter device. And so we are very familiar with them and Laborie with the numerous meetings. I can't say any more than that. But
they're funded by the Wallenberg family, so they have deep pockets.
Yeah, I know the family as well. And they're on a big acquisition trail. They spent over $1 billion this year in acquisition. So he would be an excellent strategic partner moving forward.
Do you see any challenges with going to Europe? I mean, regulatory-wise and.
I think from a regulatory point of view, I think they're not maybe in some countries as advanced as we are in digital health. I mean, say Europe, there's 3 or 4 different markets there. They're totally different. You got the French market, the German market, the British market, and they're all different and nuanced. we're not going to have the expertise or capability to do that in our team. We have a good team. That's something that a company like Laborie could do very well. They
Yes.
could pick it up and move in those markets very quickly, have the resources to ramp up the manufacturing resources and that to make it happen. And that's really our plan. Our plan is to be acquired in the next 3 years by a company with a global reach. We do see a big need for it in Europe. We see a big need for it in Japan as well. We'll probably avoid the Chinese market for a while for a whole lot of reasons. But those are the markets that we're looking at moving forward, and it will be there eventually. But it probably won't be us. It'll be us by name, but we'll be part of a much larger organization that happens.
Brent, you see opportunity beyond urology, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, and as you know, I mean, because you named it as well. What we did, we took the technology in, and as we were talking to people about it, we were having meetings. We began to be approached by many other segments. Urine output is a critical vital sign that's very hard to obtain. When you go in right now, for instance, and you have a kidney transplant, and the government has spent $250,000 in getting that done, right? Urine output is a critical factor in your recovery, and a failing urine output is an important clinical data point in your post-operative care. Right now, you get sent home with a 5-gallon jug, and you avoid into the 5-gallon jug, and that's how they measure it. Heart failure, same way. We don't have any real way of following that for people with heart failure on diuretic therapy. So this technology has a very broad potential application in those fields for chronic disease management. And we have had a lot of conversations around that. And we have a company, IO Medical, which is in the process of doing the background research, initial development to move our technology into those areas over the next 5 years. That's really what I'm doing now. I mean, I'm involved with urology as president. I have a management team that does a much better job of operations than I could do. And I'm spending most of my time right now in research and development of other markets. So we see it going into those markets as well. We're developing sensor technology to allow us to measure some of the metabolic functions. And that's in a company called IO Diagnostic. So this may have a run that takes us down the road many years.
We continue to have much to learn from you, and I can only imagine where you'll be in 7 months. So I'd like to ask you, since you're going to be there anyhow, if you would consider being one of my presenters at 10X.
Yeah, I think I would. If you just let me know what you want me to talk about, I'd be glad.
Don't bring any slides, Brent, that's all.
Yeah, no, can't do it.
I know you can't.
I go mute without slides. I mean, 30 years in academia, no slides, I go mute.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Really, really great to see you today. Thanks for jumping on. Next week,
good to see you again. And thank you for giving up your time, everybody. Just I hope it had some value to it.
Next week, we have Gunjan, who's going to be talking about the market in India. I've just invited Carla to present in 2 weeks, which happens to be my birthday. No, you don't have to get me anything, just Carla. She's going to get me a presentation, be my featured guest. And I'll see you all next week. Thank you, everyone. Good to see you, Brent. Bye for now.